The Old Testament reading is Genesis chapter 4, beginning with the first verse. Now Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is couching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain said to Abel his brother, Let us go out to the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is Abel, your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground, and now you are cursed from the ground. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me this day away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden, and I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will slay me. Then the Lord said to him, Not so. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who came upon him should kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Okay, so there's a game that I've played a few times. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. The way this game works is somebody sticks a name of a character, a movie star, or something on your head. And other people give you clues, and then you try to figure out who you are. So I know you can't see in the back, but those of you that are down front, give me some clues. What? What'd you say? Killed his brother. Well, that's a lot of people. Yeah, the first one there. So it's Cain. I knew that before I started. Okay, you knew that. Cain. So Cain and Abel. It's an interesting story. They began the story by sacrificing to God. What's interesting is nobody told them to do that. Moses has not yet received the commandments that you shall make sacrifices. It's really interesting. Archaeologists and anthropologists have discovered this thing, that in evolutionary human history, as soon as the human brain got big enough to qualify like as a human brain, what people started doing, the very first primitive people started doing, is they made sacrifices. They had some sense that they were indebted to this huge, there was some power beyond themselves, that they couldn't just make it all happen, that they were dependent on some greater power, and that they owed something back, some kind of sacrifice to that greater power. Cain and Abel, these very primitive people, make these offerings to God, and we don't really understand why. God seems to have high regard for one and not such high regard for the other. You know, it could be, there may be a clue in the text that it says Cain offered something, but Abel offered the choicest, the firstborn. See, maybe that's how it's supposed to be in Israel, by the way. They learned this later. Let's say you're a shepherd and you want to express thanks to God for the success of your flock through the year. What you do is you offer a sheep as a sacrifice. But you don't take the runt, you know, the one the mangy one that doesn't have much of a future anyway. No, what you do is you take the stud, you take the big one, the one that you're going to need for breeding next year. That's actually the one that you offer to God. In biblical religion, you offer the best. You offer the first. Mother Teresa once said this: You must give God what will cost you something. This is giving not just what you can live without, but what you can't live without or don't want to live without, something you really like. Then your gift becomes a sacrifice, which will have value before God. This giving is what I call love in action. I mean, was it that Abel had the love in action thing going? Hard to say. Cain, frustrated, rises up, kills his brother. God finds Cain, says, "Where's your brother? What have you done?" Cain's response is a question, which is, "Am I my brother's keeper?" I actually had a sticker. I thought the sticker thing would go better than it's gone all morning. It's hard to tell in advance. Had one of these. You were going to work on it. My question was going to be, "Am I my brother's keeper?" That was Cain's question to God. Am I my brother's keeper? He's thinking the answer is no, but God says the answer is yes. You are your brother's keeper. American culture will never tell you this. American culture will tell you, you're on your own. You look out for yourself. You grab all that you can grab. Maybe you grab some for the people that you like a lot. That's fun too. But are you your brother? Are you the keeper of other people? I mean, I don't think so. But in the Bible, you're your brother's keeper. You're your sister's keeper. We're keepers of all of us, one another. I was teaching a Bible study this week. Every Wednesday I do this Bible study at 11 and 7. And this past week we were looking at the book of Ruth. And one of the interesting things that emerges out of the book of Ruth is, this is interesting, in Charlotte, North Carolina today, if we say, what is property for? You would say, property is for me to live on. Property is for me to invest in. Property is for me to develop. Property is something for me to sell and make more money. That's just what property is. But in Bible times, that's not what property is for. If you ask Bible people, what is property for? They would say, this is something that God has given so that everyone will have enough. Isn't that interesting? Biblical religion, we are our brother's keepers. Now, I have one question about this. Some of you know this. Lisa and I this week moved into a house, first home we've ever owned out of the parsonage life after all these years. It's been amazing as we've purged half our worldly belongings, and it's not been a problem. It's been a great delight. It's been a sentimental journey. You know, I had 3 kids when we moved in this house 15 years ago. They're gone now, so I've got things like, you know, the little baseball glove that's that big that an 8-year-old wears, and you know, the certificates of you achieved excellent in the flute competition of 4th grade, and just all this stuff. And it's been fun to see it. One of the treasures that I'd forgotten that we had, but we do have it, and we didn't purge it, it's in the new house now, is Lisa has all of her father's sermons. Now, her father, he was the pastor here back in the 1970s. And, you know, the treasure trove of my sermons, like they used to be on a computer and they've been deleted, like it's just gone. But for him, he kept these boxes with these folders with every sermon that he ever preached, starting back in 1951. And each one, there's a folder, and they're meticulously organized, and there are many pages in each one, handwritten. They're all but illegible. How in the world he preached from these, I just have no idea. And we have, I don't know, a dozen huge boxes of these sermons. And I'm like, what are we going to do with them? We don't really have space for them. So I volunteered to Lisa. I said, what I will do is I will go through these sermons and I'll do a little purge. I'll choose these select sermons, the really outstanding ones that are memorable. We'll keep one box full, and then we can get rid of the rest. They're probably going to go to the attic and we'll keep them. I'm sure I'll lose that little endeavor. So I'm going through his sermons, and this is really amazing. He was such a good preacher. And I'm reading these and I'm going through them. It's really a moving learning experience. And then I found a sermon on Cain and Abel that was preached right here in 1977. And I looked at that and I thought, I shall steal from my father-in-law. So here it goes. Here's how his sermon in 1977, October the 10th, began on Cain and Abel. Opening of the sermon. Man walks in the doctor's office, and the receptionist says, what have you got? And he says, shingles. He says, oh. So she sends him back to the nurse's station. The nurse sits down, gets him in a gown. What have you got? He says, shingles. Oh, and she takes his temperature, does an electrocardiogram. She goes out, the doctor comes in, and the doctor says, what have you got? And he says, shingles. And the doctor looks at him and says, where? And he says, they're out in the truck. And so began the sermon on Cain and Abel. It got better from there. He had a remarkably good point. He called into question this idea that we're supposed to be our brother's keeper, but he did it in an interesting way. He said, if you think of yourself as somebody else's keeper, maybe that's not so good, right? It's like if I'm Nick's keeper, what that means is Nick's kind of subservient to me. Nick owes me. I'm taking care. We do this in mission all the time, don't we? Like, we'll take care of people. We, the haves, will drop some crumbs down to the have-nots. We're their keepers. His sermon says we're not supposed to be anybody's keeper. We're supposed to be other people's brother and sister. It's a pretty good point. God calls us to be in relationship with one another. We are the other's keeper, but it's not distant charity and it's not ignoring people. We talk about this all the time in mission. It's not the haves doing for the have-nots. As we come alongside other people and we share on this journey of life together. And it's a beautiful thing when this happens. And in Genesis 4, humanity gets off to a horrible start. Couldn't be a worse start. You have Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and there's a murder already. This is not a Hallmark family. None of the families in the Bible are Hallmark families. They're just not in there. They're all dysfunctional. They're crazy. They've got issues. As we all have issues. We had our mental health series. We don't want it to end. We want to keep talking about this stuff. And part of what came out about the mental health series is that most people, everybody, they walk around, there's something they're hiding, there's something they're cloaking, there's something they feel they can't tell to other people. We're also broken. We might not even tell ourselves. We might lie to ourselves. We need each other badly. Like if two people ever needed each other, it had to be Cain and Abel, right? Like who else are you going to go to? It's just Cain and Abel. But there's a murder. There's a division between them. What happens? We need each other. You know, America was rocked this week by the news of the suicides of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. I would say those are just the two most famous suicides of this week. There were many. And the reasons for suicide are so elusive. You can't quite figure it out, but at the end of the day, what I think we can maybe see from these two is this. I heard a woman the other day say, I love Kate Spade. I said, tell me about that. She said, I have several of her bags. It's like it's a commodity. Or people who loved Anthony Bourdain. It's like, oh, he went to cool places and he ate great food and that's cool, but I wonder what happens if we value people based on things and cool and fabulous experiences, but actually deep inside people are broken. They want to be able to say something beyond, yeah, I've been to Spain, and yeah, have you been to Mallorca? Yeah, and have you had this wine? Yeah, and oh, do you have this handbag? People want to be able to say, I'm hurt, I'm afraid, there's darkness in my head, I can't sleep at night, I drink too much, whatever it may be, and there'll be community, and we can love each other and have compassion on each other. There's an eruption of violence, Cain and Abel, and we can ask why. Is it jealousy? Is it sibling rivalry? Is the belief that this is a zero-sum game and I've got to get mine because somebody else might get it? Who knows what it is? You know, when Cain is tempted to harm Abel, God speaks to him. It says, sin is crouching at the door, but you can master it. But he can't master it. Can he? Sometimes we underestimate I don't know how to describe this, but it's just the lure of evil. Like, everything's not, there's evil in the world, and there's a lure, there's an attractiveness to it. We're drawn into it somehow. Let me try another guessing game, see if anybody can help me with this. All right. I know in the back you can't see it. I'm sorry. I'm going to try the choir and I'll see how they do. All right, so give me some clues. Tell me about myself. In the Lord of the Rings, that's a lot of people. What? My precious. My precious. I'm Gollum. I can tell. Thank you for that. If you don't know the Lord of the Rings, J.R.R. Tolkien wrote these great books and made into wonderful movies by Peter Jackson, and there's this character named Gollum. Gollum's not really his name. Gollum comes to be his name later because has such kind of health issues, he can't say his name right. His name is Smeagol. And at the very beginning of the story, Smeagol is out fishing one day with his kinsman Deagle. Smeagol and Deagle are out fishing. And Tolkien clearly had the Cain and Abel story in mind when he wrote this. So what happens is they're fishing and Deagle falls in the water. Again, he's floundering, trying to get out of the water. And as he reaches just to get his balance, his hand goes down in the sand under the water and he feels something. And he by the luck of the day, he finds a ring. And it's not just a ring, it's the ring. It's the ring of power. Everybody in Middle-earth wants that ring of power, because if I just have that ring, everyone is lusting. They'll do anything to have that kind of power. Smeagol asks Deagle for the ring, and Deagle doesn't want to give it to him, so Smeagol kills him so he can have the ring. Immediately, he begins lying about it. Somebody says, "Where'd you get that ring?" He says, "Oh, it was a birthday present that somebody gave me." And for the rest of his life, Smeagol wanders by himself. He loves the ring and he hates the ring, just as he loves himself and hates himself. He wants to be rid of the ring, but he wants to cling to the ring. He's totally alone, and yet he does have some company. He talks to himself. He has a community within his own head. He's always talking to himself. And I think when Tolkien wrote that, he's reflecting on Cain and Abel, and he's also reflecting in an extreme way on what happens in life. There's something that we think will deliver the goods for us, and we'll do anything to get it, but then when we get it, there's something hollow about it. It brings division with other people. Smeagol right off starts lying. I mean, truth is a casualty of evil in the world, right? And we wind up just talking to ourselves. There's no real community, and like Cain, we wander. We wander. There's one more. You don't have to guess who this is. I'm just going to wear this till the end of the sermon. It's a cross for those of you that are in the distance. What happens in the Cain and Abel story is pretty interesting. Cain, he's lost everything, and God puts a mark on his forehead. Scholars think it's a tattoo. Maybe it's an interesting tattoo, a mark on his forehead. Because God says, like, it's a sign of Cain's guilt, but it's also a sign of God's protection. It's a sign that Cain is broken, but it's a sign that God has mercy even on Cain, who has killed his brother. You know, I love Ash Wednesday. We come here on Ash Wednesday, and you come to the front, and one of the clergy take ashes, and they make the sign of the cross on your head. I love that. I especially love it when I go home and I've forgotten that it's on my head. You go to the grocery store or the restaurant or whatever, and people are looking at you like. And finally, some very helpful person says, "You got a smudge on your head." You go, "Oh, I was at Ash Wednesday," right? That Ash Wednesday cross, it's a sign that you're broken, but it's a sign that you're forgiven. It's a sign that you're so very guilty, but yet you're the beneficiary of so much mercy from God. And I wish we could get that feel going all the time, that anytime we go anywhere out in the world, that like we got that mark on our forehead. Maybe we think about it when we put our makeup on in the morning or when we shave or whatever we do. Roman Catholics, when they come to church, they touch the baptismal water and put it to their head. What if you could live your life walking around thinking, I have been marked by God. I mean, I am so broken. I am so broken. But God has mercy. God's with me. God never lets me go. And then you look at other people and you think, he's broken too. She's broken too, but she too is sealed by God's mercy. Then we'd figure out how to be our brother's keeper, or just our brother, or just a sister. There'd be so much love, and there'd be so much hope. Maybe there would be an end to the violence. Maybe there would be peace, wholeness. It's God's dream, the mark of Cain. For that we give thanks to God. Hey, thank you for watching, and we hope you got something out of that. If you have any feedback for us, any response that was helpful to you, we would love to hear that. Please let us know. And everything that we put out is free, and we want it to be that way, but if you're able and feel led to support the mission of our church or the cost of providing this online content, here's how to do so.